Residing in Maplewood residences wasn't my initial preference, but its proximity to my workplace and the serene walking paths made it an ideal choice for my daily routines with Baxter, my service dog. Baxter, a majestic Labrador retriever, assists me in managing my PTSD episodes stemming from my military service abroad. He is impeccably trained, always dons his service vest during our outings, and responds flawlessly to commands. Being well-versed in the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, is crucial when depending on a service animal, yet I never anticipated having to reference federal law in discussions with my Homeowners Association, HOA, president. My first encounter with Linda Prescott, the HOA president, was memorable. She approached me with a clipboard in hand and a permanent scowl, introducing herself in a manner that implied I should be impressed. "I don't recall approving a dog in this community," she remarked, her eyes narrowing as she glanced at Baxter, who sat obediently by my side. I courteously explained that Baxter was a service dog, not a pet, and thus exempt from pet restrictions under federal law. She scoffed, muttered something about individuals exploiting loopholes, and walked away. In hindsight, that was a clear warning sign. In the following weeks, I received multiple notices citing various infractions. My grass being slightly over the acceptable height, my mailbox being an incorrect shade of black, and my garbage bin being visible from the street for a brief period after collection. Each notice bore Linda's elaborate signature, complete with a smiley face that felt more menacing than friendly. Wishing to avoid conflict, I complied with each directive, but I sensed these petty grievances were merely the beginning. The situation escalated during an HOA meeting when Linda proposed a new regulation requiring all animals, including service animals, to be registered with the board and to wear HOA-approved identification. When I raised my hand to point out that this conflicted with the ADA, she curtly interrupted, asserting that federal laws don't override community standards. Several neighbors appeared uncomfortable, but none voiced their concerns. After the meeting, Linda approached me and whispered, "If you want to be difficult, I can be difficult too." Her breath carried the scent of coffee and intimidation. The following weekend, as I enjoyed a peaceful morning on my front porch with Baxter resting at my feet, Linda appeared on my lawn, clad in her signature khaki shorts and polo shirt, holding a spray bottle. "Your dog is violating the new pet ordinance by not having proper HOA identification," she announced loudly enough for the neighbors to hear. I calmly reminded her that Baxter was a service dog protected by federal law and that the HOA couldn't legally mandate special identification. Moreover, the rule hadn't even been officially implemented yet. Her face flushed with anger. "I'm tired of you military types thinking you're above the rules," she spat, stepping closer to my yard. "If you won't comply, I'll handle this myself." Before I could react, she aimed her spray bottle at Baxter and sprayed him directly in the face with an unknown liquid. Baxter yelped and recoiled, pawing at his eyes. I immediately stepped between them and demanded to know the contents of the bottle. "Just a little vinegar and water solution," Linda replied with a smirk. "It won't hurt him, but maybe now he'll learn to respect authority." Furious but maintaining composure, I took Baxter inside, rinsed his eyes thoroughly, and ensured he was unharmed. The solution had irritated his eyes, but thankfully there was no lasting damage. Once Baxter was comfortable, I contacted the police. 911, "What's your emergency?" the dispatcher inquired. I reported the assault on my service dog, emphasizing that interfering with a service animal is a federal offense. The dispatcher took my information and assured me that officers would be dispatched promptly. Approximately 20 minutes later, 2 police officers arrived at my door. I detailed the incident, presented Baxter's service animal certification and training documentation, and pointed out Linda's residence across the street. One officer remained to take my statement, while the other approached Linda's house. From my window, I observed Linda gesticulating wildly, her face contorted with indignation. The officer appeared unimpressed by her theatrics. Upon returning, the officers informed me that Linda had admitted to spraying Baxter but claimed she was enforcing community standards. They explained that they had informed her that interfering with a service animal is indeed a federal offense under the ADA, punishable by significant fines and potential jail time. Additionally, her actions constituted animal cruelty under state law. They were placing her under arrest and asked if I wished to press charges. Without hesitation, I affirmed. Linda was escorted to the police car in handcuffs, shouting about how she would have me evicted and how the entire neighborhood would turn against me. Several neighbors had gathered to witness the commotion, and I overheard one whisper, "She's finally gone too far." Another neighbor approached me afterward and apologized for not speaking up at the meeting. "We've all been intimidated by her for too long," she admitted, glancing at Baxter, who had recovered from his ordeal and was back to his calm, attentive self. The legal proceedings progressed swiftly. Linda was charged with interference with a service animal, animal cruelty, and harassment. During her initial court appearance, she arrived in designer attire with an expensive lawyer who appeared increasingly uncomfortable as the evidence mounted against her. The judge was particularly stern, noting that community rules never supersede federal law, especially concerning disability accommodations. While awaiting trial, an emergency HOA meeting was convened. I attended with Baxter, and to my surprise, nearly every homeowner in the community was present. The vice president of the board stood up and addressed the room with a composed but resolute voice. He acknowledged the growing concern about Linda Prescott's conduct and proposed a vote of no confidence in her leadership. "Her actions haven't just harmed a neighbor's service animal," he said. "She has exposed all of us to legal liability and has clearly misused her authority. This isn't just a personal issue anymore. It's a community one." There was a brief pause, followed by murmurs of agreement throughout the room. When the vote was held, it was unanimous. Linda Prescott was officially removed from her position as HOA president effective immediately. Someone had even replaced her nameplate at the front table with a blank card, as if erasing her presence altogether. The applause that followed wasn't loud, but it was sincere. For the first time since I had moved into Maplewood Residences, I felt like part of a community that stood for something. As the criminal case proceeded, Linda's attorney negotiated a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to a reduced charge in exchange for avoiding a lengthier jail sentence. But the judge was far from lenient. In the final hearing, he sentenced her to 30 days in the county jail, imposed a $5,000 fine, ordered 200 hours of community service at a local animal shelter, and mandated that she complete an education program on disability rights and federal protections. The courtroom was silent as the judge read his verdict. Linda stood motionless, her posture stiff, and her expression shifting rapidly from disbelief to frustration to something resembling regret. "But I was just enforcing the rules," she said weakly, her voice barely audible. The judge leaned forward, speaking clearly and deliberately. "The most important rule, Ms. Prescott, is to respect the law of the land. That law protects service animals and the people who depend on them. You chose to ignore that, and now you must face the consequences." As the bailiff approached to escort her away, our eyes met briefly. Whatever entitlement she once carried had faded. There was no trace of the smug superiority she'd worn like armor on her porch that morning. Instead, her gaze revealed a quiet realization. She had crossed a line that couldn't be redrawn. She mouthed something that might have been, "This isn't over," but we both knew better. Baxter sat beside me, poised and composed, the embodiment of professionalism and resilience. I reached down and gently scratched behind his ears. He leaned into my hand, a simple but powerful gesture of trust and companionship. In that moment, all the tension, the anger, the courtroom drama, it faded into the background. What remained was the bond between a veteran and his service dog, unbroken and unshaken. In the weeks that followed, the atmosphere around Maplewood Residences began to shift. Neighbors who once avoided eye contact now waved as they passed by. A few even stopped to ask about Baxter, to apologize for not stepping in sooner, or to express quiet admiration for standing up for what was right. The walking trails felt more welcoming, the air less tense. It was as though the community had collectively exhaled, letting go of a fear that had lingered too long under Linda's oppressive oversight. The HOA board initiated a review of all current policies, this time with open forums and inclusive discussions. I was invited to join the advisory committee on accessibility, a gesture that wasn't just symbolic but showed a genuine willingness to change. It felt good to contribute, not out of obligation, but out of hope for what the neighborhood could become. One sunny afternoon, about a month after the court ruling, I returned home to find a small package on my doorstep. Inside was a note from the new HOA president and a custom-made collar tag for Baxter. It bore the words, "Protector, Partner, Hero." Below that, in smaller letters, it simply read, "Maplewood honors you." I smiled, clipped it onto Baxter's collar, and watched him trot proudly into the yard. The same yard where he had been assaulted was now a place of honor and respect. It didn't erase what had happened, but it transformed it into something meaningful. A reminder that sometimes doing the right thing requires standing firm, even when you're alone. But I wasn't alone. I had Baxter. And now, finally, I had a community too. And in the quiet strength of those shared mornings, just me, Baxter, and the sunrise, it became clear that healing doesn't always come in grand gestures. Sometimes, it starts with a dog lying at your feet, a neighbor waving from across the street, and the peace of knowing that justice, however hard-earned, had finally been served.